we're going to do is have a competition. You build something out of the siege weapon book you've received, improve it, take a video, send a picture, and then we'll get the word out to everybody. The winning team will get to pick from 2 of Leonardo da Vinci's machines. You get to build and keep that. Are there any questions on that? Any questions? I hope. Anybody, how many people think they might enter? Raise your hand if you think you might enter. Again, it's free to enter. It's a cool thing. And think of it this way. You could build it, maybe get some extra credit out of your social studies class. All right? Because that's what we're doing with our students at my schools. We're going to have them do it. Let me get this out of escape here. Window. There we go. All right. So here I'll show you some tonight you can look at and see what we're doing. All right, we got a good turn. We got a good group of folks here. Okay. If you don't have the materials from this slide right at this moment, don't worry. I will be putting out the PDF of this as well as you've got your book. You'll see different objects in there you might want to build. Okay? Now, you know, and we'll make sure this video is being copied. It's being copied right now as we copy our videos. And you should be all set at that point. You can rewatch it. The goal of a catapult is to fling a mass in the air, mainly to inflict damage. That's what the goal of a catapult is. So we're going off this. You can have this. I've got a question here. Let me see what the question is before we get started in here. Let me pull this up. Move that down here. So we just build from the book. No, we don't just build from the book. You start with one from the book. We're going to look at fit and finish. That's the minimum you could do. What we really want to see you do is to improve it. Come up with something. Use better materials. Use lighter materials. Things that look better. All right? Then everybody's going to submit pictures of them, and then we'll see what you think. All right? So, catapults can be split into 3 categories. Traditional catapult, ballista, trebuchet. A traditional catapult looks like a bucket on a long arm being held down by some form of tension. So that's what that bad boy looks, right? Just like there. Okay? A traditional catapult uses stored tension by twisting and stretching ropes or bending wood to vault its mass into the air, or launch its mass into the air. Okay, so I'm just checking on IDs here. So here's the handle to tighten it. You've got this through hole. It's going through this hole. Your torsion bundle, it might be a horsehair for that matter, and the arm that you're going to be launching off your trebuchet. And you're tightening it on both ends. But ultimately, it works a lot like a bowman does. The energy stored in the twisted rope is similar to how energy is stored in a bowstring. Okay? So, a traditional catapult can store more energy to send their projectiles further by using a winch. That's what this winch is right there. And a winch is a wheel and axle simple machine. That's why the wheel is bigger than this axle. You get more mechanical advantage. Plus, look at this gear that's going up. With this, it can only turn in one direction unless you lift that gear up. Otherwise, it's stuck there. It lifts up and drops in. Okay? And here's a winch right here. A winch allows a person to store a great amount of energy, in this case tension, over a period of time. And it's a lot of potential energy. Ballistas and other shooting machines were the first catapults. The ballista looks like a big crossbow. Look at the arms being pulled back here and here. Like a bucket catapult, a ballista works using tension stored in string and wood. Again, it works like a bow and arrow, but now we're going to, besides your arm muscles, we're using twisted rope. The twisted rope, you know, you are using your muscles. You've got to use your muscles to turn it right here, and you're going to store that energy. But now we're using a simple machine. Where on this bow, until we started making compound and all these, you know, crossbow things you see made today with levers and everything in them, You didn't have that. I was always surprised. I'd pull up my dad's crossbow, and it was amazingly hard to pull back. I never realized until I started having to do it. Okay. So, it's using those things. So let's look at the history of this. Romans, here they go, ready to fire off. Humans have limitations. We can only lift so much, can only throw so high. By increasing the energy stored in projectiles, you can inflict the amount of damage they will inflict. So what all that's saying is, if you take this projectile and you put a lot of potential energy in it, well, how can you do that? Well, one, you can twist the ropes and build up elastic energy, or you can take it up higher and higher. Just think if I took a ball and I lifted it up 100 feet or 10 feet, dropped it on you, then 100 feet, and then 1,000 feet. You would see that you get more energy up to a point. Then after a while, the friction of the air starts slowing it down. It doesn't get any faster. So if you're a human being, you're throwing things at other human beings, but you can only throw it so high, so far. And so we're going to start adding equipment. Now, when it's military, we tend to even spur it on more so. All right? We get more energy. The threat of your city being sacked and your family being harmed advances great military advances, which aren't always the greatest thing, folks. But for example, if you look at World War I and at the beginning of World War I and what the planes look like, and by the end of World War I, it was a huge improvement in flight technology. Huge. It's enough so by 1920s they're starting to investigate diesel jet engine. All right. People we've got here. I'm checking my numbers. Okay, great. So then, how can we increase this energy? Now, I don't care that you know this next formula, but it's gravitation basically says weight and height. That's a fancy way of saying you get more potential energy the higher ups you have something in the heavier weighs. Well, you get the project off the ground, make it heavier. And I think that's just human nature. I think if you take a half-ton truck and take it 2 miles off the ground, it's going to hit you. Make it a 10-ton truck, and wow, it's really going to hit you. All right, now on a bow and arrow, it's elastic potential energy. That's how much it's stretched. All right. Engineers research ways to increase the forms of energy storage in a weapon in order to increase their damage. All right. So this engineers researched ways to increase these. All right. So what they did is they even put together a think tank. A think tank is where, and we have them today, where, okay, we get people that are pretty sharp in their fields. You put them all together and you say, okay, come up with a better way to make agriculture better in the United States. A better way for our economy to run. A better way to improve schools. Better way to design better weapons. They had this 400 years before Christ. Put that in perspective. 400 years ago for us was 1600s. We're just getting the first colonies in the United States. So 400 years. So let me restate that. That was 400 years before Christ. When this was going on, that was almost 2,500 years. But I just wanted to give you the time between when Christ was born and when they had this think tank was the same amount of time when we were just forming colonies in this country. That sometimes it's hard, 200 BC, 100 BC. Wow, it sounds like a long time ago, but it is a big difference. All right. So they started thinking, well, what can we do to get better weapons? How can we make them stronger, more powerful? So let's look at potential energy and look at some of the things we can do. We're going to play this game. Now watch me here. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go to this. Now watch, or you'll go in the wrong thing. All I want you to go is don't click on Box 101. Click on Start Game.
Box10.com. Only great games.
So here we go. Start. Don't play more games. Now, let me turn this down. Okay, I got a better idea. I'm just going to kill it. All right, now take your pointer from where the bow is and pull it back this direction. Slightly an angle. See how the power's written right there in the angle. So let's pull it from here. I'll do it like that. There we go. Oh, too high. Let's try it again. Pull it. I'm going to take my angle a little bit less. Oh! Now, I've got my results on that one, so I'm going to try again. I'm going to make this angle right there. Too short. Again here. So it needs to be about 5.5 or I got to hit the power off here. All right, let's try that. Oh, no. So I'm hitting it. I'm hitting it. Okay, so go ahead and try that for a minute. You're going to see real quickly it's a combination of power and that angle that affects. All right. Let's go ahead there. Okay, let's go ahead. Well, let me get that. I didn't mean to flash my email there. All right. Okay, has everybody tried it at least once? Raise your hand if you've tried it. I'll put the link there for you. Hang on, let me see if I can get that here. Copy link. Raise your hand once you've done it. Just a few times to mess with. You can play with it a little bit later. And anybody can do better than I can because I'm terrible at video games. It's very sad. I had a question here. How do you get to it? Click on that link. Okay. Nice. First try. Well done, Jason. Everybody gave it a try, and then we're going to get rolling here in another minute. It's 6:56. We'll stop here at 7 o'clock with this. Give another minute or so. Let's go, guys and gals. All right. We got, I guess, got a couple more minutes. So by now, I hope you're finding out pulling the bow back, that angle all matters, and what we're trying to do here. Which, by the way, they got very good at sighting these things in. But if you look at a bow, it's got it's both compression and tension. The outer side of the bow is undergoing tension. This is like on a bridge, frankly. The inner side is going under compression. And you see it right here, compression, tension. Because of that, there's tension's a pull, compression's a push, you know. And we're going to come back to that in a minute because we're going to reinforce this by doing that. So how do these forces store energy? Well, imagine a loose rubber band versus a taut rubber band. You use your arm to pull that rubber band back. It's now storing that potential energy of you pulling it back. And same thing as when a bow is drawn, basically. All right? It's doing the same thing in both instances. So as you pull the string of a bow, your arm does the work. The energy it takes you to pull that string is stored in the bow as tension. So you're going to take the work of you pulling it back, all that energy from your muscles go into the bow as tension. So that elastic energy that you transferred by pulling back is, when you let go of the bow, is transferred as a kinetic energy into the arrow. And there it is. Now make sure you always wear eye protection when you're doing this, all right? So one you can build up here right now, I'll show you, is this bow and arrow. You can take a pen, cut it in half, and this is going to be part of your arrow. This is really just for reinforcements. And then you're going to make this, the pen casings, going over some skewers, wooden skewers. Be very careful. Do not shoot this at cats. Do not shoot this at your little sister. All right? Could hurt somebody. Then tape it around like this. So this is going to make part of your bow. And watch. Then you're going to bend it like this. And then this will be an arrow. You can use a rubber band here too. All right? And then it's going to look like that ink cartridge. You're going to have to build it just like that. You know, and be careful, those ink cartridges have been known to break. All right. The more energy you can store in that bow, the more powerful the bow it can be. All right? So let's look at the elastic energy in this bow. It goes from 0 to, say, 30 right here. Okay? Now, this is how far, the x-axis is how far you pulled the bow back. The y-axis is how high up you pulled it. Okay? This is how much force your arm is exerting. This is how much elastic energy you store. Watch when you just pull a little bit farther. By just moving a few more inches, you get a lot more energy. That final few inches is huge. We see that with model airplanes. If you say there's 400 winds in the rubber motor, like if you wind up the motor on a rubber model airplane, the rubber on a rubber model airplane, it will break at a point. So let's say that breaking point on average is 400 winds. You would find that most of the final 20%, 20% of 400 would be 80 winds. So from 320 winds to 400 winds of break is when you get all your thrust. That if you really wind it up that hard, it's going to go up way up high real quick. Not long, but it's going to get a lot of thrust in this last little bit here. That's why once a rubber model airplane, if you ever let one go and fly it, if you fly just a few feet and say it crashes, then you pick it up and try to throw it again, they don't usually ever fly very well because you've lost a lot of that final 20%, all that thrust. So another thing you can do is you can make sure the bowstring is already taut. It's pre-tensioned. So in other words, the bow comes to you and it's already very, very taut. So when you pull it back, it's already got tension built into it. The last thing you can do to build up this elastic energy is make a stiffer bow. And see how much more pulling force this one requires over this one, normal one? Again, it's all about making it so that bow can store energy. Now, again, you also have to be pretty strong. Back in the day, bowmen had to be very strong to be able to pull that bow back and forth. You had to be strong enough to be able to pull it back and be able to breathe and release it. Bow must be strong enough to carry the maximum pulling force without breaking. So what can we do to do that? Well, pretty soon, if you just had a piece of wood, it would break. So they would take wood, animal horn, and animal sinew, which is, think of that as the tendons and muscles. The tendons are the connective tissue in an animal. And what they would do is they put the three things in here. Here's part of the horn on the inside. No. Here's the wood of the bow. And here's the sinew on the outside. So those three things together allowed you to store, the bow could be bent, more energy could be put in the bow. You could pull it harder, hold it longer. And it made a big difference. And so here's another example of a bow. You can use a compound ruler bow made of multiple materials. It's using a plastic ruler, tape, and you might get a chance to build that in lab. Now, the limits are physiological. In other words, the bows were no longer breaking. So the bows could handle you pulling it. Problem is your archers couldn't pull them anymore. All right? So, and that was limited by the length of the archer's arms, how strong they are, and upper body strength, and then strength and dexterity of fingers. That's why generally most bowmen are males, because males generally, plenty of it, there are exceptions, so, but generally have more upper body strength. There's plenty of women that have upper body stuff strength to shoot bows, or women archers that compete that level the whole 9 yards. But I'm saying back 1,000 years ago, it wasn't so much. All right, because of these limitations, the best bow required 45 pounds to pull with the 28-inch draw range. So that's like 2 feet, 2 3/4 feet, 45 pounds. And, you really could get a lot of. Here's a traditional bow, pulling force of, there's a traditional one, right? And here's a compound. Look how much more energy you stored in that compound bow. It was just very dramatic in your draw length, okay? This has to have a lot longer draw length. This one does not. And this one went to, tops 20. This one went up to 45. So a compound bow, certainly made of different materials like that, was incredible. So then comes the fact, okay, we've made our bows out of multiple parts that won't break, can store all this energy, but we can hardly pull it ourselves anymore. So what they did is they developed the gastrophetes, or belly bow. We saw a little video of that last week, remember? And, let me go ahead and give you so this bow goes like here, and you use this to shove the arrow into it. We'll show you in a second. So there's the guy, he puts it on his waist, and there's the front of the bow. Let's go back. This part here and this part. Uses his body to cock it, shoves this into it, and locks it down. See how it is right there? And forces it back on that. And then once they were set there, you drop the arrow in there, See, the arrow goes right into here. And now you're ready to launch this bad boy. And, you know, and by having this iron mechanism too, if it's getting so powerful, so much energy, your hand really can't hold it. By having that iron mechanism, you can precisely launch it right when you want it. Okay? Now I've gone pretty far here. Any questions what we've covered so far? Sorry about that. Okay, and everybody's talking about how much they were shooting it. Great. But any questions on what we just done? Raise your hand if you have a question. Okay. All right, let's go on to the next one. So, what did they do to make the Gastrophetes better? Well, they made it bigger, of course. You know, and the next advancement starts leading us to our first true catapult. Notice this catapult doesn't kind of think of the medieval one. They're definitely using arrows here. Now they're using, look at this. They're making levers. Remember how simple machines, when we put them together, make complicated machines. So, you know, you're starting to get into a set of levers that you put in here. The person pulls it down, sticks the lever back in, pulls it down, because he's putting his leverage of his body on it right there, or her body. And they also would use winders like this, that it would have a pulley, and again, this is a handle, so think of a wheel and axle. A lot of leverage on that wheel and axle. So it allows you to put a lot of force on it. So it'd be something like this. Of course, and here's the problem you run into this stuff. Okay, now you got all this energy into the system. You got it so it doesn't break. Well, now we'll launch big arrows, because remember we said the mass and everything? Well, now I can't even lift it. And I certainly can't hold it still enough to shoot it. So now I got to put it on a platform. I got to put it on a base. So, you know, the trade-off, of course, here is massive weapon. If it hits somebody, it takes down a guy on horseback. It hits the horse, knocks the horse on its side. The problem gets to be, though, it gets to be unruly, where a regular bowman can launch 3 or 4 arrows at this. So what they have to strategy is, well, we have to be able to launch at such a great distance, you can't hit us with your regular bowman. And we certainly aren't going to let armed soldiers get to us. You know, and then you start getting into how big of a bow can you make that will fly in there. Maybe we need to start flinging other things. So here's another cool one. Uses rubber band, push pin. You're going to cut up an old debit card or gift card. Make sure you never launch this at people. You're wearing eye protection. You know, don't hit your little brother or sister with it. That's not cool. All right. So, if you have an old gift card, one that's expired, one that has no balance, because we cut this up, there's no getting money back. All right, so you don't want to do that. You're going to use a hole punch to cut 3 hole punches there, then this plate, right, which is going to allow us, on taking this plate, putting it on the center to make this. First thing is to pull this tab up 90 degrees. And then fold these sides over. Get that in, and you punch a hole here. Put that paper clip on, just your hot glue gun, that paper clip right there. You know, that final 1/4 inch strip, we're going to use those pieces to make a place for the stand on. So that's going to be your base, support base for this bad boy. Getting the hot glue gun again. Going to look something like this. Any questions? All right. Now, this we're using a rubber bowstring again. This is non-traditional. Cut open a wide rubber band and then tie both ends of the rubber band to the opposite ends of the bows, using outer holes as a tie down. Okay? And you don't want a lot of slack when you build that. And they didn't use a lot of rubber bands. All right. And then you take a cotton swab and cut it up, make a little notch. And it looks like this. And again, you just pull that lever back, this thing is going to fly out. Again, don't shoot at anybody. So composite bows temporarily meet the limits of how much we can pull it. And a composite bow, think about it, is making out of bone, skin, everything. They keep going there. Now we start working on torsion catapults. And starting mid 4th century BC. Now think about that. 4 centuries before them, they're making these. You have the urethanone, which I'm saying terribly, and palintone. So urea tone and palintone. And I am so sorry that sounds that bad. The first is an arrow, the other one throws rocks. They start to realize it doesn't have to be piercing. That rock has so much energy. When it drops on something, it'll hurt anything. All right? And so there they are. Here's some examples. Some of these things were 45 feet in length. They were huge. You can imagine in a time when you're looking out, you're feeling pretty good about your fortress, and you see them pull up a weapon that is 45 feet long, that can outshoot any of your arrows. It basically can ping away at you. Much of the hardware looks the same. Got ratchet, triggers, well, you know, all the things we've been doing, but now they're going to start doing springs in this. See right there, they've got the ends here and here. You'll see what I mean. We're going to twist it now. All right? And that's Torsion Force. And if you think about it, before we used to just be, it would be your arm that was the primary storage for elastic energy when you pulled it. And now we're twisting things. All right. And some of them were bundles of rope with wooden arms thrust through the center. And so you want things that can handle tension like this, right? So let's, pardon me. So we're at this point again. Up to here, it's you, the bow person, that's doing it, right? But with like a weapon like this, so that's your arms using a bow. But with a catapult now, this kind, you're using simple machines to help you twist that torsion arm. All right, before it was your arm, now we're using simple machines. But the machine gets so big, you got to drag it around. So there's constant trade-offs. So if I see you pulling up with one of these early catapults, I might send my guys out to attack you immediately. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? I'm sorry, I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking on these. Don't worry, in the weeks upcoming, you're going to be making things. All right, here we go. I'm going really fast. All right, so now you've got, again, you're taking these ropes and you're twisting them, tightening it up. And there's the bow right here. These are the arms of the bow, like in a bow and arrow. You can see it, there's another way. And they use the sinew. They use things that connective tissue can handle tension really well. They didn't use rocks. That wouldn't have been very good for them. And so here they start to make it. The bow is sitting right here, folks. They've literally taken the bow and set it on its side. And then they're pulling this in such a way that this whole thing's going to come back. All right, watch this. So let me go up here, show you this one. Here's another catapult game. This one's just a little bit more fun. It's not, let's go ahead and start. Okay, what you try to do there is this, and they change the target distance from different distances. But say you got to go 68 feet. Well, I'm going to use a 5 kilogram. I'm going to go greased, and I'm going to go 50 thing of rope. Let's see if that gets, how far that gets me. That's the small one. And it went 250 feet. That's a little bit too far. Target distance is only 68 feet. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to make it a 15 pounder and let's see what it does. And here, let me give you a link for this. Again, this can be a good, that's very close to it. I think I know how to do that one. I think I'll, you know, I go a little bit. But let me give you where this link is so that way you can have it. I'm going to pull this back up. There we go. Okay, so you can play with that if you wanted to. That's as far as we're going to go today. We'll go to trebuchets and maybe some architecture Wednesday and part of Monday, and then we're going to go ahead. A Bowmaster's game you can play. That's what I was doing. This does require the Unity plugin. All right? So, with that in mind, I hope you have a good evening. I hope you enter the contest. Take a picture of it. You'll send myself or Mr. Maurer the email, a picture of what you did. You'll see the rules, how you improved it. You know, if you have a series of pictures, take it while you were building it. That's always important. Any other questions? And raise. Let me see here. Let me go turn that thing off. All right, I've got a question. Let me go find out what the question is. Bear with me, folks. Sure.
What do you get when you win the contest?
Oh, you either going to get you get a choice. You can do the Leonardo da Vinci Catapult or the Leonardo da Vinci Wind Screw. People said they was thinking of kind of like a helicopter thing. You can pick one or the other of those kits, and I'll send you one through Amazon. It'll go right to your doorstep. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So that's, if you want one of those, let's enter. Again, it makes a good social studies project too. See if your social studies teacher will give you extra credit for making something like that. Demonstrate it to the class. A wind screw it's really interesting. It's something Leonardo da Vinci designed. Let me see here. Siege contest. Maybe I get it. Here's what it looks like right there. Do you see, folks? This is what that looks like. Turns with this axis. This whole thing spins through. And there's his catapult, and he improved upon the design. He was writing all these things down in his notebook. They didn't build a lot of them, but he was thinking about how you might do it. So it's obviously could, in his head's mind, figure a bunch of things. Okay, well, it's 7:30 now. We got some questions? Well, we don't have any questions, so let's call it a night. I'll look forward to seeing you Wednesday, okay? Take care, all.